Well, launching in South Africa is Saxo Bank. So that telling to an extent of the demand that you're seeing in South Africa in terms of investment opportunities globally. What's your sense of the investment demand you're catering to here?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity in South Africa also in the longer run as a gateway to other African markets, and we have been involved in the market here to some extent from the outside for a while, but we thought it was time to be on the ground, and of course the loosening of capital restrictions, etc., that open up much more international markets and much more international opportunities for South African investors is something that plays very well to our type of offering, which is a multi-asset global platform that basically allows access to lots of stock markets, commodities, etc., around the world.
You say lots of stock markets. Just what kind of global portfolio will South African investors be able to access on this platform?
Well, we have about 30 international markets on the platform, and that includes all the major markets, US, European, Asian markets, and also around 20 futures markets, meaning that there's access to all of the interest rates and commodities, etc., from the futures market. So it's really a very broad palette of products, adding to also our currency services and our CFD services. So it's very wide-ranging macro type access that you get. And the fact that we put all that together in one accessible account with one set of real-time account values and transparency, I think has worked very well in many other markets, and we think it'll be well received here.
Where there's diversity in terms of product offering from a geographical perspective, are you looking at a stronger bias towards developed markets, or is there emerging markets that forms part of that portfolio as well?
As a company, we have traditionally been working out of Western Europe, which is still about 45–50% of our business, but we also have to face up to the fact that that's not where the growth is going to be for the next decade or two or even longer. So for us, it's very important to get out into the markets where we see big potential for the future, and I think we are typical of a general view that you would have to take of the world today, that a adequately diversified portfolio does include investments in many other areas than where you traditionally were looking to the US and the major European markets. So yes, both for us as a direct business, but also for international investors, I think South Africa is a must, and so are many other exciting emerging markets.
Of course, I ask because this, it's all unfolding in a context where there's much debate in terms of valuations on offer in developed markets compared to emerging markets. But then again, the risk you're taking on in developed markets as opposed to emerging markets.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be a connection between risk and reward in life, and I think, of course, if you're a Western European-based investor, of course you should have a natural spread around what is also your own objectives for the longer run and your own currency, etc. But I think that by and large, over time, the higher risk in emerging markets is being very well rewarded, and I think it is pretty evident that a country like South Africa, with all the opportunities it has, both in its own right, but also acting as a gateway to many other markets, will in the long run be a very good investment. But will there be big fluctuations along the way? Will there be issues with currencies along the way? For sure. But I would say, having just opened an office here, of course, we do that because we believe in the longer term, and at the end of the day, it's the long term that matters.
Who do you deem your domestic competitors here in South Africa? Because that, to an extent, would influence the way asset managers will have to go in order to maintain their client base moving forward.
I think we're quite unique in our type of offering. Of course, you have a number of domestic players in the domestic markets, and I don't think we're not looking to outcompete that. We're looking to offer a combination of obviously the needed and natural access to local markets, but combining that in particular with the international opportunities, because that's where we can really add value to this, and where we have a proven track record, I would say, of opening offices and adding something new to the market. So we're not, we at least sometimes know our limitations, so we're not here to teach people how to trade South African stocks, but we are here to offer an opportunity to diversify, and I have a feeling that there's a quite substantial pent-up demand because of many years of restrictions on foreign investments. I think a lot of people have been looking at with excitement on on some of the big names on the U.S. stock markets, but have very little opportunity to actually execute that in real life.
From the conversations that you're having out there, I mean, what kind of sense do you get from South African investors about the kind of valuations offered here in South Africa? Are they looking at things being fully priced locally, hence the need to go abroad, or is it merely as a result of a need to diversify?
I think it's mainly the latter. I mean, of course, if you have restrictions on markets and too few things in essence to invest in, you will tend to get rich valuations. But they can also be sustained for very long periods of time, right? And they can be over time justified by actual growth following a pricing lead, right? So our primary conversations go around the possibility of adding something to the portfolio. Mm-hmm. And it's also important to mention that a lot of the stuff we do is interacting with other institutions. We're actually making our technology available to other institutions that already have a domestic client base, and actually just offering them the opportunity to expand their offering vis-a-vis clients rather than compete with them around their client bases. At
what cost to the South African investor?
Well, I think we are a competitive broker here in South Africa, where we're acting under Saxo Capital Markets. So we will be competitive, and in particular, we will be all encompassing so many markets that I think to execute some of those things through foreign counterparties would be much more expensive. So I think we're coming in. We're not necessarily trying to always be the cheapest, because we think there's a big value in having the right tools at your hands and having the right support and the right access. But we are competitive, and of course with institutions that we might choose to cooperate with, that would be around some kind of revenue split, where they will also see the advantage of adding these opportunities to their investors.
Certainly it's going to be interesting, Lars, to see what this gateway opens up in terms of opportunities for investing on the rest of the continent. Thanks so much for having joined us in studio this afternoon.